Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs Talks Music and another edition of anniversary albums. Today we're going to be looking at albums that are having a significant anniversary in the month of May 2025. For those of you who are new to this series, when I say a significant anniversary, I'm talking about one that ends in a 5 or a 0. So 35th, 40th, 25th, 50th, that sort of thing. You'll get the hang of it as we go along. As always, I've picked 10 albums to have a look at today. Please do let me know in the comments if I've left any out that you think I should have included. Let's get started with an album that is having its 40th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 1st of May 1985. It is a debut self-titled album by Suzanne Vega. Now, I became a Suzanne Vega fan the minute I heard on the radio the song Marlena on the Wall, because it's just such a fabulous song. Musically, it's really interesting. Lyrically, it's really interesting. Suzanne Vega's voice is just wonderful. At the same time, it's kind of breathy, it's kind of mysterious, it's kind of pretty. It's all sorts of things. But she's just such an incredible songwriter. There's so many good songs on this album. Small Blue Things, another great one. Neighborhood Girls, The Queen and the Soldier, Cracking, Straight Lines, Undertow. There's just so much. You know, she gets pegged a bit as like a folk rock kind of thing. I think there's a little more going on musically than just folk rock. I think there's a lot of, you know, it's a little bit 80s, but it doesn't sound like overtly 80s. There's definitely a little bit of what for the time was modern production though. All in all, it's an absolutely terrific album. If you've never really checked out Suzanne Vega, her debut self-titled album, excellent place to start. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 55th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 8th of May 1970. It was the second last album recorded by this band, last album released though. And I am obviously talking about Let It Be by the Beatles. Now, I've done a Beatles studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This didn't come particularly high in my ranking, but having said that, there's nothing less than a magnificent album in the Beatles catalogue. I am a huge Beatles fan, a huge Beatles apologist. I think everything they did was wonderful. This is no exception, even though it may not be one of my absolute favourite Beatles albums. I still think it's a marvellous album. I mean, it starts off with The Fabulous Two of Us. Beautiful song written by Paul, sung by John and Paul in duet. It's absolutely wonderful. Dig a Pony is great. Across the Universe, beautiful, beautiful song. I don't know if this is the version of that I like the best, because it's got, you know, a couple of the songs on here are kind of overwhelmed, I think, by these massive orchestras and choirs that Phil Spector tagged onto them. This is definitely one. It's still a fabulous song, but I probably like the original version of it that they released for the World Wildlife Fund album a little bit better. I Me Mine is one of the best George Harrison songs that he ever did with the Beatles. Obviously he would do magnificent stuff in his solo career as well, but I think I Me Mine is an absolutely brilliant song. Dig It's just like a little them messing about in the studio sort of thing that's sort of tagged on between I Me Mine and Let It Be. Let It Be, obviously huge hit for them, great song. Really, really emotional song from Paul. Then Maggie May, another thing they just sort of messed around with in the studio. It's a traditional folk song that they just kind of jammed out while they were recording. I've Got a Feeling, fabulous, fabulous song. It's a collaboration between Paul and John, in as much as like Paul had part, John had part, and they kind of smashed them together. Works really, really well. Paul obviously is a big fan of that song because he's brought it out in recent years and doing it in concert. I think it's a great song. One After 909 is an old Beatles song that they originally tried to record in 1963. It's a good song. I really like it. The Long and Winding Road is another beautiful ballad from Paul, but again, gets overwhelmed by the strings and the lushness, and I prefer hearing a more stripped back version of The Long and Winding Road. For You Blue is a cool little blues song from George. Not my favourite George song, but it's still cool. And then Get Back, really good song. So, you know, even though this didn't rank particularly highly in my Beatles ranking, I still think there's a lot of really good Beatles music on that album. The next album we're going to have a look at is one that's relatively new to me, but it's certainly not a new album because it's having its 50th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 9th of May 1975, but it's new in my collection and is one of those bands I've always wanted to get into and have just started really getting into. The album is Warrior on the Edge of Time by Hawkwind. Absolute space rock. Really, really love this. This is the last album that Lemmy would play bass on before he would get fired from the band and go off to form Motorhead, which would be a whole different beast from Hawkwind. You know, but you've got Assault and Battery Part 1, you've got The Golden Void Part 2, Wizard Blew His Horn, Opa Loca, yeah. The Demented Man, Magnu, Standing at the Edge, Spiral Galaxy, Warriors, Dying Seas, and Kings of Speed. All in all, this is, you know, this was pretty much my introduction to their studio work. It's, I think, the second album of theirs I got. It's a really, really great place, I think, to start with the Hawkwind catalogue. So definitely recommend it if you've not really listened to Hawkwind before. Now, the next album we're going to have a look at is a one and only album as far as studio albums go. For this particular artist, they'd done a lot of live stuff, but they only did one studio album. And this album is the only album they did that is all music. They were mostly known as a comedy band or a comedy act, doing stuff on stage and, you know, skits and all that sort of thing. The band is the Doug Anthony All-Stars, and the album is Das Icon. If you only think of Doug Anthony All-Stars as a comedy act, go and listen to this album because, I mean, yes, a lot of the songs on this album are comedic. By no means all of them, by the way. But they're proper music, you know? Love all this artwork too. Just the band themselves did. It's absolutely wonderful stuff. It's great music. They were really good musicians and really, really good singers, particularly Paul McDermott. He was the guy who sang most of the lead vocals for them. Commies for Christ is absolutely wonderful. Kind of got this hip hop thing going to it, a bit of a rap thing. My Baby's Gone to Jail is an absolute rave up. Then you get a song like Jack, which is haunting and quiet and mostly a cappella and just with some sound effects other than the vocals. And it's eerie. It's not a funny song at all. It's about a mine cave in. Change the Blades is really dark. Krishna is a funny song. That was one they used to do on stage quite a lot. Shang-a-Lang, yeah, it's really good. Little Gospel Song is what it says on the tin. It is a little gospel song. It's played completely straight. Unlike Go to Church later on the album, which is absolutely a sort of a piss take on religion. Dead Elvis is great. I Want to Spill the Blood of a Hippie. That was one of the singles off the album. Really, really good. Rat is just this weird sort of Gregorian chant. As I say, there's all sorts of styles of music on this album. Broadlick Nick is a kind of Irish drinking song kind of thing. It's like one-upsmanship in the, you know, I did this, I did that, you know. Sort of like, think Four Yorkshiremen by Monty Python, that sort of thing. 2X is this really strange, again, mostly instrumental, eerie piece. Motorcycle Saint Sebastian, another real rave up, but then it ends with Bottle. And Bottle is this really sort of delicate, serious song about alcoholism. absolutely must. Even if you're not into Doug Anthony All-Stars as a comedy act, or if you don't know them at all, check this album out. I think it's absolutely wonderful. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 55th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 15th of May 1970. It is the second album by this band, and that is In the Wake of Poseidon by King Crimson. Now, I've done a King Crimson studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This ranked pretty high for me. I really, really rate this album. In fact, a little spoiler for that studio albums ranked, I actually ranked this just a bit higher than In the Court of Crimson King, which I know is heresy among King Crimson fans. I enjoy it just a smidge better. I mean, it's got, you know, the peace theme, and then, you know, you get that is recurring throughout the album. You get pictures of a city. You get the beautiful cadence and cascade. Really gorgeous. After, you know, Pictures of a City is this huge sort of, you know, very early King Crimson sounding sort of thing. And then you get the really delicate cadence and cascade. And then you get the title track In the Wake of Poseidon. Definitely has that sort of Court of the Crimson King feel to it. Side 2 is really, really marvellous. I mean, it starts off again with the peace theme. Then you get Cat Food, which was released as a single. You get a slightly longer version of it on the album. Cat Food's a wonderful song, absolutely great. Then you get the incredible Devil's Triangle and all the different parts that come to that. I still say, I said this when I did my King Crimson studio albums ranked, it is the most dark, evil use of mellotron ever in music. It is so sinister and so spine-tingling. It's absolutely wonderful. And then you get the peace coming back at the end. Peace and end. It's, you know, top to bottom, absolutely marvellous, marvellous album. Next album we're going to have a look at, we're kind of going back to a Beatles thing here, but not quite. It's having its 45th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 16th of May 1980. It is McCartney II, obviously by Paul McCartney. Now, I've done a top 10 Paul McCartney studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Did this make my top 10? You'll have to watch that and find out. I do think this is a pretty good album, though. I think it's an oddity in his collection. It's different from the first McCartney album sound-wise because there's 10 years between them. It's the same in that he recorded it basically all on his own. Linda does some harmonies, but other than that, you know, Paul McCartney plays all the instruments, sings all the vocals, writes all the songs. It's got the Brilliant Coming Up on it. I love that single. You know, I was 9 years old when that came out, and I loved it then, and I still love it now. Temporary Secretary, I know that's a one that really divides people. Some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. Paul obviously likes it too, because again, in sort of 2010s, he started playing that one live, and I think that's a brilliant deep cut to pull out. Absolutely. On the Way is great. Waterfalls is the other song that's really well known of this. It's really quiet ballad, just him and his electric piano and a few synths in the background. Nobody Knows, kind of a rave up. Side 2 is, I think, where a lot of the people who don't like this album get their heckles up. You know, Front Parlour, Summer's Day Song, Frozen Jap, rather, unfortunately titled track, Bogey Music, Dark Room. One of these days, though, I mean, to end the album, One of These Days is an absolutely gorgeous song. Much better ballad than Waterfalls, as far as I'm concerned. It's an absolute, you know, talk about a deep cut that doesn't get talked about. One of These Days, Paul McCartney. Add it to your list. Fabulous song. Next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary also in the month of May. It was released exactly the same day as McCartney II on the 16th of May 1980. It is the third album by this band. It is the best known album by this band, and I am talking about Freedom of Choice by Devo. Now, I've done a Devo studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Obviously, Devo, one of my favourite bands of all time. What you may or may not know, depending on how much you've watched the channel, this is the very first album, like vinyl album, I ever owned. I got given it for my 10th birthday. And I've been a huge Devo fan ever since. You know, just love this band. This may not have ranked quite as highly as you might expect on my studio albums rank though, so do check that out. I still adore this album though. I mean, it's got Girl You Want, it's got Whip It, you know, that's the one Devo song that people who've never heard of Devo know. You say Whip It, they're, oh yeah, there. But you know, also things like It's Not Right, Snowball is great, Ton of Love, the title track, Freedom of Choice, is one of my favourite Devo songs, such a good song. You know, side 1 ends on an absolute banger, side 2 starts on an absolute banger with Gates of Steel. But some of these lesser known tracks, especially on side 2, again, really strong songs like Cold War, Don't You Know, That's Pep. I love That's Pep. That's always been one of my favourites on this album, going back to when I first owned it as a 10-year-old. Mr. B's Ballroom is great, and then Planet Earth to end it out. It's not a particularly long album, it's about 32, 33 minutes long, but there's absolutely no wasted space on it. Terrific album. The next album we're going to have a look at is also having its 45th anniversary in the month of May. It was released 4 days later on the 20th of May 1980. This is another album that actually is a divisive album in this particular band's fan base. I love this album though. I'm talking about Unmasked by Kiss. You know, I know starting with Dynasty, or Dynasty as the Americans like to call it, you know, people started to think that Kiss were going pop and all that sort of thing, and maybe there's something to that. But I love this album. You know, this is when I was first being exposed to Kiss. And so, you know, impressionable little kid, you know, that late 70s, early 80s Kiss is my Kiss. Everything from sort of Dynasty on through to Lick It Up, that's my sort of sweet spot with Kiss. Obviously the early albums are, you know, fabulous for what they are. But that's my Kiss, because that's the Kiss I grew up with. And Unmasked is no exception. The song Shandy was a huge hit here in Australia. Absolutely huge hit. Not in America, it didn't do anything in America, but huge hit here. But you know, you've got some wonderful Ace Frehley songs on here. Ace really shines on this album with songs like Talk to Me and Torpedo Girl. But Is That You is a great song, even though they didn't write it. It's a terrific song. They do a great version of it. Tomorrow's a really good Paul Stanley song. Two Sides of the Coin, another great Ace song. You know, She's So European's probably my favourite Gene song on the album, although Naked City's really good too. You know, I really enjoy this album, and I love that cover, that comic book cover. It's just fabulous. Next album we're going to have a look at is the youngest one we're looking at today. It's having its 25th anniversary in the month of May. It was originally released on the 23rd of May, year 2000. It is the last, unfortunately, studio album by this band, and that is Wasp Star, Apple Venus Volume 2 by XTC. I've done an XTC studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This did not rank particularly highly. And again, but like the Beatles, there's no such thing as a Duff XTC album. There's still great music on this album. Playground, you know, terrific song to start the album with. Stupidly Happy is an unusual song from Andy. You know, it's not the sort of thing you're used to hearing him sing about. In Another Life's not my favourite Collins song. My Brown Guitar, Boarded Up is one of my favourite Collins songs. I think it's a terrific song, you know, about music venues shutting down and all that sort of thing. I'm the Man Who Murdered Love is great. We're All Light. Standing In for Joe's another really good Collins song. So 2 out of 3 great Collins songs on this album. Wounded Horse is my least favourite song on this album. I've never been a fan of that. But then it ends with You in the Clouds Will Still Be Beautiful, which is great. Church of Women, which is a hoot. And The Wheel in the Maypole, which is just one of the best songs on the album. You know, my favourite song is either the first song or the last song on this album. Either Playground or The Wheel in the Maypole. They're both absolutely fabulous, fabulous songs. And then the last album we're going to look at today is having its 45th anniversary. We've had a lot of 45th anniversaries this month. It was originally released on the 30th of May 1980. It is the third album by this artist. It is just self-titled, like all of his first 4 albums were. It is Peter Gabriel's third album, also known as Melt, because of that cover. Probably my favourite Peter Gabriel album cover. I think it's absolutely fabulous. Absolutely terrific album, top to bottom though. I mean, it starts off with the incredibly creepy Intruder. No Self-Control is wonderful. Start. I don't remember. Great, great song. He'd do wonderful live versions of that too. Family Snapshot is fabulous, and Through the Wire. Games Without Frontiers. One of his best singles as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely love that song to death. Not One of Us is great. Lead a Normal Life, but then it ends with the tragic song Biko. What can you say about this album? It's absolutely wonderful. Produced by Steve Lillywhite, engineered by Hugh Padgham, features Phil Collins on some of the drums. You know, lots of guest players, including Dave Gregory from XTC. So, yeah, it's an absolutely terrific Peter Gabriel album. So there you have it. Those are my 10 anniversary albums for the month of May 2025. Please do let me know in the comments which albums of these you like, maybe which ones you don't care for so much, and most importantly, please include the albums you think I should have included for this month, because I always love seeing your suggestions. Sometimes they're things that were on my longer list, sometimes they're things I never even thought about, and I love it when you guys come up with that, because it makes me go out and listen to those albums. So I thank you in advance for that. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see some of my other anniversary album shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my favourite albums of all time shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.